Marques falando, e vamos para mais um Assistindo Porcaria, mas posicionamento ridiculamente questionável da câmera 10? Esse vídeo era para ter sido domingo passado. Só que essa porcaria inútil desse Wi-Fi aqui não cooperou. E nem vamos ativamente procurar porcaria, porque eu já encontrei a porcaria para assistir. O microfone tá aqui, caralho. Já encontrei a porcaria. Simples assim. Domingo passado. Mas essa porra de claro não quis cooperar. Então vou colocar aquela porcaria.
To me, some of the most hilariously intriguing
Vocês vão ter que esperar. Pronto, aí está. Porcaria.
To me, some of the most hilariously intriguing controversies in online discourse are those involving bootlegs. Yes, we've all seen these viral stories showing knockoff products, copycat Chinese companies, and blatantly obvious instances of intellectual property theft. Some cases so egregious that it's downright comical. From fake Jordans with phallic appendages to offensive Asian KFC ripoffs replacing the Colonel with Barack Obama to video games illegally using Disney characters to simulate C-section surgery. The imagination of bootleggers is seemingly limitless, and today I'll be taking you on a tour through some of the brands, knockoff products, and companies that have been wrapped up in bootlegging controversies. Some of these stories ending in costly civil lawsuits. These are the internet's most...
Opa, tá errado. E antes... Calma aí. Mas mexe nessa... Pronto, luz, caralho. Uma aqui, vou mostrar aqui, ó. Comprem lá, boné do MC Androidão. Você tem que falar com o MC Androidão pra sobre o boné pra comprar. Tá aqui, ó. Veja aqui com mais historiedade, mano. Depois eu melhoro a questão da claridade desse lado aqui, ó. Depois, a luz da webcam não é forte o suficiente. Aí. Vai precisar de copo. O tamanho dessa garrafa é minúsculo. Cachaça da boa, isso aqui. Cachaça da boa.
Most bizarre bootlegs. Today's video is sponsored by Keeps, and to begin the ad...
Desastre, era pra vocês terem visto, na verdade, eu colocando do Mangue Cadáver, um do Judas Priest, mas eu não tenho paciência pra ficar segurando o negócio pra costurar.
And let me show you my hair from some old videos back in 2020. Yeah, your boy was losing hair and losing it fast. I didn't want to go... How about a story involving a very recent case of bootlegging? The Mexican Buc-ee's incident.
Aqui.
Buc-ee's is a staple of Texas,
Tava meio alto pra mim.
and it's successfully spreading to other regions of the United States for good reason. We're talking locations with over 200...
Isso me lembra uma coisa. Não quer? Tirar a imagem aqui. Fala sério. Não era isso que eu tava procurando. imagem mó específica, velho. Acho que só indo no Reddit mesmo pra encontrar. Aí fica pro vídeo mesmo que eu vou fazer do Reddit.
Fuel pumps, a sprawling market filled wall to wall with signature snacks, beverage, and Bucky the Beaver merchandise. A hot bar, constantly serving fresh brisket sandwiches, baked goods, and tacos. Now, aside from all the amenities that they provide, Bucky's has also become successful in part due to the popularity of their logo, or mascot, Bucky the Beaver. Their beaver mascot is found on practically every product sold in the store, and I'd be willing to bet you've seen some folks in your town wearing shirts or hats featuring this beaver. And with a business and intellectual property as hot as Bucky's, it's no surprise that some out there...
Os patches do desastre que eu tenho são 2, são importados. Assim, porque eles são os oficiais da banda, tipo... R$25 cada, eu acho, tipo... São dos... sei lá, 3 patches importados que eu tenho. Eu tenho um chinês bootleg do Morbid Angel, que eu comprei uns anos, ano passado. É só desses mesmos que eu tenho, sinceramente, patch, e a gente encontra muita coisa de boa qualidade aqui no Brasil mesmo, então precisa comprar coisa de fora. Isso aqui é que não encontra isso, aqui é uma da hora até. Não dá pra ver daí da câmera, mas... Deixa eu até mudar aqui a tela, tipo... Não dá pra ver aqui daí da câmera, mas o... Se eu pegar a câmera eu acho que dá pra ver, tipo... Venha! Você tá vendo isso aqui? A logo da banda, ele é um tecido, tipo, que brilha que nem glitter, ó. Muito legal. Isso sim é um posicionamento questionável. Tanto que eu tô tendo que segurar a câmera. Nossa, tá aqui um pino, posicionamento questionável. Vai, já deu.
have attempted to illegally make use of some of Bucky's trademarks. Which brings us to the bizarre case of the Mexican Bucky's. On July 23rd of 2023, a photo was uploaded to Facebook by a man named Ramon Montalongo. The caption, which has been translated from Spanish to English, reads, "You are not going to believe this."
Não. Traduziu errado. Raça é raça. Os caras tá falando assim, que sobre os próprios mexicanos, ou como eles muitas vezes chamam.
Apparently photographed just out of the city of Matamoros, Mexico, Ramon's photo appeared to have exposed a previously undetected Bucky's bootlegging operation. His image showcased a store that was under construction, this ramshackle concrete building featuring some rather curious signage and logo work. The joint was called Buck E's, the E's spelled with 2 I's instead of EES. And its exterior walls also featured imagery of a grotesque-looking buck-toothed rat creature. I mean, Jesus fucking Christ, look at this Family Dollar-ass Bucky's we got here. So as you can clearly see, the intent with this Mexican Buc-ee's was to jack the swag of the Texas-based company. Ramon's photo showcasing this apparent bootleg operation would subsequently go viral on Facebook. The comment section of his post flooded with a seemingly endless stream of laughing emojis. However, when news of this bootleg Buc-ee's made it back to Buc-ee's in Texas, well, the company wasn't taking this as any kind of joke, and as a matter of fact, they were pretty pissed off about it. Several days after being made aware of the Mexican Buc-ee's, they put out this statement. The Buc-ee's brand represents clean restrooms, freshly prepared food, and great service. Buc-ee's has invested heavily in innovation across the company to create and maintain these award-winning guest experiences. Accordingly, Buc-ee's will not stand as an idle spectator while others use without permission the intellectual property that
Work today is broken. We're all working in too many disconnected apps, and it's killing team productivity.
that Buc-ee's has cultivated for decades. And after this statement, there were rumors floating around that Buc-ee's was going after Buc-ee's legally. It's important to note that Buc-ee's has somewhat of a track record of going after companies legally for copyright and trademark infringement, and have actually been pretty successful in these regards. For example, in 2018, Buc-ee's won a federal trademark lawsuit against a Texas barbecue restaurant chain called Choke Canyon Barbecue. The basis of this suit being that Choke Canyon had violated their trademark by using this logo and mascot. A hat-wearing alligator flashing a smile in front of a yellow background, looking up and to the left. Putting Choke Canyon next to Buc-ee's, you can kind of see where the company was coming from.
Eu acho que os caras exageraram nesse processo, isso aí. Eu acho.
Here. And with both joints being known for their barbecue brisket, I can understand why Buc-ee's had some qualms with this. In the time since Buc-ee's has made their comment on the Mexican bootleg, it appears the fake Buc-ee's store has completely redesigned their mascot and front signage, in what seems to be an effort to placate the company and possibly avoid future litigation. As you can see, the mascot has lost the red cap and has gone through a complete makeover. Looks like he grew a little bit of a mullet too. Which is fucking hilarious to me though, because now with this redesign done, it almost appears like they're kind of stealing the generic chipmunk design that you see in Disney animations, but I digress. As of now, I can't find any evidence of a lawsuit being filed against the company, but considering this is a recent story, I wouldn't be surprised if an update comes forward. And here we are, KFC. KFC is a fast food staple and the Colonel's chicken has become famous around the world. Internationally, KFC is particularly popular in Asian countries. And because of this, many Asian merchants and entrepreneurs want to get franchising rights to sell the food. However, it can be quite difficult for international sellers to get these rights. And in some cases, when individuals can't legally take advantage of the Colonel's branding, they get a little creative. And that's what brings us to the story of Obama Fried Chicken, or OFC. In October of 2011, images began to surface on social media showing what appeared to be a KFC restaurant in Beijing, China. However, instead of the face of Colonel Sanders being in the logo, it was the visage of then-President Barack Obama, smiling from ear to ear. The slogan at the bottom of the sign can be translated as saying, "We're so cool, aren't we?" The restaurant was called OFC, aka Obama Fried Chicken. So not only was this restaurant infringing on KFC's IP with them basically stealing the brand theming, the inclusion of Barack Obama here in the context of it being a fried chicken restaurant is extremely questionable to say the least. The owner of this restaurant would be identified as 21-year-old Chinese man Zhu Baoli. Initially, his motives for including Obama in his branding were unclear, but many made their own assumptions. Naturally, the logo sparked quite the outrage in the West, and KFC wasn't all too happy about the Colonel swapping either. When the story hit the US media, Reverend and civil rights activist Al Sharpton denounced the Obama Fried Chicken restaurant and said it was, quote, insulting, offensive, and plays to racial stereotypes. A KFC China spokesman echoed this sentiment and stated they were extremely displeased with the uses of their trademark and were considering suing OFC. Quote, "We're considering legal action as it's a knockoff and has nothing to do with us and infringes on our brand trademark. We find it distasteful." However, speaking on this matter, in a way backfired for KFC because they were almost immediately met with critics that reminded them that KFC, you guys literally commissioned a Chinese KFC commercial earlier in that same year that had an Obama look-alike in it.
Change, not only for America, but for the whole world. Not only for your mom, but for you, for your stomach, for a better taste.
魚柳包嘅味道 change 咗啦 ，KFC 家鄉鮮魚柳軟包，煎定香甜。
Change is good.
In fairness to KFC, they would later apologize for this commercial, stating, quote, "It was meant to be a spoof and no disrespect was intended." And I really don't think they meant any harm by this. The commercial was more so about Obama's change slogan. You know, they're changing from KFC chicken sandwiches to, hey, we also have fish sandwiches too. Whatever the case, there were some folks that were upset about that commercial. But anyways, back to OFC. Even the Chinese locals were upset about Obama fried chicken, as apparently Zoo's Obama chicken was actually quite delicious and popular with customers. And thanks in part to the recognizability of Zoo's KFC-styled branding, his shop was outselling and outcompeting nearby street food merchants. During this swirling controversy, it seemed like everyone in the world had weighed in on it, except for Zoo himself. In October of 2011, a news crew would manage to catch up with Zoo outside of his OFC restaurant and finally asked him why he used Obama as the mascot for his fried chicken joint. The answer might not be what you expected. In this interview, Zoo would explain that he had somewhat of an Obama obsession and deeply admired the US president for what he describes as having a positive attitude and cheerful smile. He
Tá, o cara, tipo assim, eu sou obcecado por Barack Obama.
claims that he had no intention of being offensive or violating KFC's trademark or invoking any racial stereotypes. Keep in mind, this story took place back in 2011, which was during Obama's first term, and this was probably the peak of the man's international popularity. He was famous all over the world. The man was loved by many internationally due to his charismatic persona. In fact, some folks would actually capitalize off of the love for Obama, often making fake bootleg Obama merchandise and using him in logos for their own trade benefits. So it's possible that Zoo got caught up in this frenzy, but maybe was ignorant of the sort of Western stereotype that he maybe inadvertently engaged in here.
Considerando que o cara era chinês, muito possivelmente.
It's really tough to say, but I'm almost willing to give this guy the benefit of the doubt because he seems like more of an Obama fan than anything. In an apparent effort to placate KFC and their legal threats, Zoo would eventually change the name of OFC to UFO. And after some pressure from local authorities, he would reluctantly remove the infamous Obama fried chicken sign. Despite the massive worldwide discourse that followed this controversy, you might be surprised to find that Zoo was never legally pursued by KFC in any serious capacity. And as far as we know, he continues to operate restaurants to this day. And that was the story of Obama fried chicken. In this video, we previously discussed the Obama fried chicken incident.
Essa aí
A
foi de
Chinese
fuder a
man
boca
used
do
the face
balão,
of a
velho.
world leader to sell chicken. And while that's indeed quite bizarre, what if I told you there was a case of a chicken salesman who rebranded his restaurant featuring logo and iconography of one of the most infamous world leaders ever? Yes, this is the story of Hitler Fried Chicken. In 2013, a man from London was on vacation in Bangkok, Thailand, when he came across a curious fast food restaurant. He took a photo of the place and published his findings to the internet, where the photo would then be shared to Twitter by a man named Andrew Spooner. Spooner's tweet quotes the Londoner who discovered it. Quote, "Very bizarre fried chicken shop in Thailand. I kid you not, complete with a picture of Hitler in a bow tie." Taking a look at the image, we see that the fast food joint had apparently swapped the face of Colonel Sanders with that of the genocidal Fuhrer, and was using Hitler to further its chicken selling goals. And what you might find surprising is that this restaurant was said to have been somewhat popular with locals, getting rave reviews. Hitler Chicken had opened in June of 2013, and on its menu were fried chicken, burgers, and kebabs. A Western traveler who visited the spot said, quote, "I went in for a bite last week and got some fried chicken, which was pretty good. I asked the guy behind the counter why it was called Hitler. He just shrugged his shoulders and said the owners had thought it was a good image." I couldn't think of a fucking better image to represent my chicken restaurant, you know, guys? Seriously. So naturally, this post would go somewhat viral online for just the fucking batshit juxtaposition that we got going on here. Hitler Chicken would leave the online world scratching their heads. Why would anybody use Hitler as their mascot And not only that, why was it working? Well, to better make sense of this bizarre marketing ploy, allow me to introduce you to what has been dubbed as Nazi chic. Nazi chic has been described as the use of style, imagery, and paraphernalia in clothing or pop culture related to Nazi Germany. Throughout the 2010s, Nazi chic had become somewhat of a fad within Southeast Asia, Thailand in particular. It was quite popular.
Vai, peixinho! Caraca, 2 peixinhos comendo, cara. Uau! Chegou mais um! Chegou mais um! Caraca, pegou de primeira! Melhor!
Popular with the youth, who were the ones who were the most ignorant of Hitler's deeds and symbolism. In fact, it's said that at the time that it wasn't all too uncommon to find school children dressing up as Nazis, and bootleggers were selling Nazi-themed t-shirts and artwork around the country because people wanted this type of apparel. And while it's impossible to say why this symbolism was so popular in Southeast Asia at the time, I'll just go back to what I said earlier. I think you had a lot of young people who were just completely ignorant about what Hitler did. I think the Holocaust is something we know way more about as Westerners, and maybe, it's not really talked about that much in Asia. To exemplify the popularity of Nazi chic at the time, there was once a case in 2016 involving a Taiwanese high school orchestrating a Christmas parade, wherein the students dressed up and marched in Nazi-themed uniforms, performing Zig Heils and constructing a cardboard tank to boot. And apparently, the theme of this parade was voted on by the students themselves. This parade would go viral online and drew international criticism, resulting in the school administrators being humiliated and later apologizing for the parade. Quote, "When reviewing the parade beforehand, we failed to closely consider the meaning of the historical facts." I mean, seriously, it's like they're treating the garb as like a fucking Halloween costume, you know? And with this context explained, let's return back to Hitler Fried Chicken. When this image went viral in the West, many were confused, but a lot more were outraged by it, understandably so. And considering the fact that Hitler's face was swapped with Colonel Sanders and they were using the KFC theming, it was only a matter of time before the KFC people came after this Hitler chicken place. After discovering the viral Hitler Fried Chicken image, the company would make a statement regarding the shop. "We find it extremely distasteful and are considering legal action since it's an infringement of our brand trademark and has nothing to do with us." These threats appeared to successfully have spooked the owners, as after KFC spoke up, Hitler Fried Chicken changed its name to Hler and allegedly took a sign down
Os caras só assim, vamos fingir que não somos NS.
Featuring the KFC style branding. There's not much else to report about this story, and it's said that Southeast Asia's fascination with Hitler still remains to this day, at least in a smaller proportion. In the world of fictional restaurants, the Krusty Krab might just be the most iconic. Owned and operated by Eugene Krabs of Bikini Bottom, this penny-pinching crustacean has made a great fortune over the years off the backs of SpongeBob and Squidward. Krabs' arch nemesis is rival fast food restaurant owner Sheldon J. Plankton, who restlessly attempts to steal Mr. Krabs' Krabby Patty's secret formula. You might say that Plankton is an intellectual property thief of sorts, but as we all know, Plankton has yet to be successful at stealing Mr. Krabs' formula. But what if I told you that a Texas-based restaurant was? The story begins in 2021 when a company called Pixie Universal opened a SpongeBob-themed pop-up restaurant in Houston, Texas. Funded by a businessman named Sam Chand, this restaurant was called the Rusty Krab. And these guys really pulled out all the stops when it comes to looking like the real Krusty Krab. The Rusty Krab sold SpongeBob
O cara falando disso é tipo, no Brasil, aqui em São Paulo, tem o restaurante oficial do Bob Esponja.
Food items and drinks, Krabby Patties included. And the restaurant's interior featured an admittedly impressive real-life adaptation of Mr. Krabs' diner. However, while the theming was well executed, the food and drink quality wasn't getting the ravest of reviews. Customers complained about having to pay for a ticket to get in. The food and drink prices were high as well, and an excessive amount of mandatory gratuity was added to each bill. Which this is hilarious to me because all the stuff I just mentioned sounds like some shit that Mr. Krabs would pull in the Krusty Krab.
Money!
Now keep in mind, this restaurant was in no way licensed by Nickelodeon or SpongeBob.
Tipo
And that
brasileiro.
begs the question, is this legal? At the time, Mr. Chand claimed that the Rusty Crab was an artistic interpretation of the fictional restaurant and had no affiliation with the actual brand. The website said, quote, "We are not affiliated, authorized, endorsed by, or in any way officially connected with Nickelodeon or the SpongeBob brand directly, or any of its subsidiaries or its affiliates. This is Kefi HTX's artistic adaptation recreation of an amazing series that added value to our childhood." So yeah, they were very much forthcoming that they had nothing to do with SpongeBob. It's not like they were trying to hide from it. And it's almost as if they seem like they would be protected legally by some sort of parody exemption under IP trademark law. In this news interview, a woman named Asha, who was apparently affiliated with ownership, candidly spoke about the show and how it was her dream to open a Krusty Krab style diner one day.
Hey, good morning to you, Jose. So, like a lot of folks, I'm a huge SpongeBob fan, so I was very excited about this. We've got Asha. She is the owner, and you helped bring the Rusty Crab to life. Talk about this experience.
Yes, well, I've been a SpongeBob fan literally since I was about 10 years old, so this is a lifelong dream of mine to be able to recreate something that was so nostalgic in my childhood. I really wanted to give it a feel of people actually being in Bikini Bottom, and I believe we nailed it, don't you think?
You guys absolutely nailed it.
Despite the complaints from prices, the Rusty Crab would be somewhat of a popular attraction in Houston, but its virality online would be an issue, as eventually it found its way back to Viacom CBS, the at the time owners of SpongeBob. On May 25th of 2021, Viacom sent a cease and desist letter to the Rusty Crab. However, after receiving this letter, the very next day, the Rusty Crab announced that it was extending its run through August 1st, and that tickets would be available to enter until the end of 2021. Taking this as a signal that the Rusty Crab wasn't going to cease or desist, Viacom decided they were just going to sue him. In their lawsuit, Viacom comments that the restaurant featured illustrations and designs that were exact copies of those featured in their SpongeBob SquarePants cartoon. In addition to this, they cite workers dressed up just like the characters from the show. As a defense, the owners at Pixie Universal would state that the Rusty Crab was made as parody, and that their imitation of the restaurant should be allowed under parody exemptions and copyright law. However, unfortunately for the Rusty Crab, a judge would disagree, as it was later determined that the Rusty Crab had violated Viacom's intellectual property rights. As a result of this lawsuit, the company behind the creation of the Rusty Crab was ordered by the courts to pay $6 million in copyright damages to Paramount, who had recently acquired Viacom, as well as the transfer of all Rusty Crab online domain names to Paramount as well. I gotta say, I'm honestly kind of conflicted on this one because of the videos that I've seen of the inside of the Rusty Crab, they did a damn good job of imitating the cartoon version of the restaurant. So I guess the next thing I'd like to ask is, like, Paramount, can you guys make your own Krusty Krab at Universal or whatever fucking park Nickelodeon is associated with? That would be pretty sick. But that was the story of the Rusty Crab.
Oh no.
In this next story,
Oh no, Microsoft Bimbos.
we'll be looking at a bootleg adjacent internet mystery that began all the way back in 2001. That mystery only being solved as recently as 2021. This is the strange case of the curiously named business Microsoft Bimbos. This internet mystery all begins on July 20th of 2001 on Alf's Room, a Japanese blog managed by a man in his 50s named Yoshinori Adachi. On this day, Adachi would post a blog entry titled Microsoft Bimbos. It contained an image of what appeared to
Loja Santo Antônio, aqui tem de tudo para sua Páscoa, vem? Tem chocolates, recheios variados, formas incríveis, bicos de confeitar, embalagens, artigos de festas, utensílios.
appeared to be an electronics store of the same name. And on the surface, this looked like the store owner was attempting to create like a bootleg version of a Microsoft store. Adachi took and uploaded the photo himself, simply finding the obvious Microsoft-inspired theming of the business to be humorous. While at face value, the name Microsoft Bimbo seems like nothing more than an amalgamation of random vowels and consonant sounds, there's actually more than what meets the eye here. the word Microsoft being used as the Japanese pronunciation of Microsoft can sometimes sound like this when spoken natively, and the word bimbo is a Japanese word that can be roughly translated in English to mean cheap. So add these two together, you get Microsoft Bimbos, a store that sells cheap electronic/computer parts, I guess. The Microsoft Bimbos post on Adachi's Alf's Room blog wouldn't see much attention initially and would soon be forgotten as few visited this page. But his photo would live on. Several years later, the Microsoft Bimbos image found its way onto Western internet forums, and the image became a popular meme on subreddits like r/crappy off-brands, with many pointing to the business as a cliche Asian bootleg company. However, at this point, the attribution to Adachi had been lost and nobody really knew the source of this image. This was problematic because many were wondering where this business was located and what it did, as some wanted to actually go there and check it out. As Microsoft Bimbos grew as a meme, its popularity expanded to a small legion of internet detectives who would then task themselves with cracking the Microsoft Bimbos mystery. One such individual was YouTuber Nick Robinson, who in 2021 managed to rediscover Adachi's long-lost Alf's Room post that was published nearly 20 years prior regarding Microsoft Bimbos. Nick would then arduously scry over Adachi's blog post and report his findings to his large viewer base. In a subsequent video, he would communicate these findings, reading several comments found in the old blog in his report. One old comment to the blog revealed that Microsoft Bimbos had actually closed down since Adachi authored his post in 2001. Here are some of the messages authored by Adachi and an anonymous user on the old blog. Used PC and parts shop Microsoft Bimbos. It's a suspicious name. It's a parody of Microsoft Windows. It's a used PC and parts shop, isn't it? In other words, it's a hardware store, right? That's true, but the name is Microsoft. Is that okay with such a name? The logo mark is just the reverse of the Windows one. I think Microsoft will complain. It wouldn't be strange to come, though it appears the store closed around the end of 2002. Nick found that Adachi's blog post also featured the location of where the man took the famous Microsoft Bimbos photo. This picture was apparently taken by Adachi in Maebashi City in Kogimachi, Japan. Nick's visit to this long-lost ancient blog post answered a lot of questions regarding the Microsoft Bimbos mystery that had sprung up in the early 2010s. However, the biggest question was where exactly was the Microsoft Bimbos building? Yes, according to Adachi, it had been closed down, but people still wanted to know where this place was. Not one to leave stones unturned, Nick refused to yield on his quest to fully solve the Microsoft Bimbos puzzle. And with unwavering dedication to the cause, he then tasked himself to scan the entirety of Maebashi City using Google VR, in the hopes of basically brute forcing his way into finding the old Microsoft Bimbos building, basically looking around and seeing if he could find a structure that matched the image. One might say this would be like finding a needle in a haystack. However, after countless hours of what likely at the time felt like a hopeless endeavor, Nick Robinson stumbles upon a miracle. The madman actually fucking found the building. Through brute force and a bit of luck, Nick was able to locate the building, which was formerly Microsoft Bimbos. He would publish the address to the internet, and all things considered, that was the end of a 20-year-long internet mystery. Microsoft Bimbos had been solved. Nick's video was met with much fanfare online. As coming from someone who has solved some internet mysteries myself, it's a good feeling and deserves praise whenever someone cracks an old one like this. So shout out to Nick. The cherry on top of this story is that Nick would actually travel in real life to the location of the Microsoft Bimbos sometime after finding it virtually. The Microsoft Bimbos computer hardware store had since been converted into a restaurant, which Nick would eat and drink at. A rather satisfying conclusion to one of the biggest mysteries in internet bootleg history. I'd imagine that few of you are surprised to find Disney in a video about bootlegging. As the owner of some of the most valuable intellectual property in the world, Disney is constantly subjected to bootlegging efforts. Generally, this takes the form of unauthorized retailers selling counterfeit merchandise. And while this is certainly the most damaging form of theft, I honestly think the more intriguing cases of Disney bootlegging have come from people trying to make fake movies and video games using their characters. Take for example the case of the Autobots, which is considered to be by some the most egregious and shameless case of Chinese bootlegging ever. Autobots was a movie produced by a Chinese production studio called Blue MTV Movie Studio in 2015.
Discordo. Carrinhos.
卡卡，男，8岁，一个有梦想、上进快乐的好孩子，是一个顶尖的汽车工程师。
So this is Autobots. Obviously, the name is just straight up jacking the Transformers, but the name really only scratches the surface of the IP thievery we've got going on here. Let's take a closer look at the poster. Taking a look at the movie's poster, you notice another problem. Yeah, this is just straight up cars, and that's like scuffed Lightning McQueen right there. Getting into the film itself, we find that Autobot's plot revolves around an engineer whose experiments result in
Vai de Nescafé gelado. Abriu, misturou, refrescou. Nescafé, faça seu mundo.
anthropomorphic vehicles, each with various conflicting personality traits. The vehicles having to work together despite their differences to win difficult races. Autobot's protagonist and shameless Lightning McQueen knockoff is a character dubbed K1. The scene from the movie that I'm about to show you simultaneously introduces the character and showcases the dogshit quality of this movie. So yeah, there's really no reason for me to like point by point break down this movie. This is a Cars knockoff. It's the bootleg to end all bootlegs, seriously. And people were quick to catch on to this. After Autobot's release in China, clips and posters related to the movie would find their way to the screens of Western internet users, and it wouldn't be long before Disney sniffed out the bootleg. Keep in mind, this was a movie actually showing in Chinese theaters. After discovering what they saw as blatant IP theft, Disney would file a lawsuit against the Blue MTV Movie Studio in China, taking them to court late in 2016. Disney would later win a settlement of $195,000 due to the Autobots' theft. And yes, as you can see in the case of the Autobots, Disney's characters are often used to create bootleg animations and movies. But there have been a small example of cases where Disney characters are used to make unauthorized video games, sometimes to disturbing effect. One particular incident of this occurred in early 2015 when a mobile game app appeared on app stores wherein you played as an OBGYN and using surgical tools and witchcraft performed a C-section on Anna from Frozen. The entire game relying heavily on characters taken from the Disney Frozen universe. The game begins with the player checking the baby's heartbeat using a fetal heart monitor. Then users are instructed to pick up a scalpel and perform a C-section on the Disney character. Many on YouTube would play this app because it was so shocking and they would get views, and as a result of this it got exposure and some outrage followed. Many would chime in on social media complaining about the graphic game, fearing that kids would accidentally play it and become traumatized. Please do not download or play Anna Gives Birth. It will ruin Frozen and scar you for life. In light of the discovery of this unauthorized game, the Frozen C-section simulator has since been pulled from app stores. And as far as I'm aware, no legal suit ever came out of this situation. In recent years, Bluey has established itself as the top dog when it comes to children's entertainment programming. This widely beloved kids show has won numerous awards since first airing in 2018 and is consumed by families around the world, with parents praising Bluey for the show teaching children important life lessons. Any of you guys out there with kids know just how popular Bluey is, and I know there's some adults out there that watch the show as well. Hopefully that doesn't turn into another brony situation, but I digress. Unfortunately, though, with any children's IP that becomes popular, there are going to be some bad actors out there that try to profit off of children, and sometimes this leads to kids getting traumatized. Those of you who have been on YouTube for some time are most likely familiar with ElsaGate. ElsaGate was, and to some extent,
Nada. Cadê essa porra, velho? Buceta. Acho que achei. Achei. Achei! Trouxe. Vai tomar no cu, você.
Still is an ongoing YouTube crisis involving dubious content creators stealing popular children's IP and using it to create explicit cartoons and bootleg animations featuring these characters for financial gain. This disturbing content insidiously finds its way into the YouTube algorithm of children, and kids have been inadvertently traumatized by this deceptive content on many occasions. Sadly, because of Bluey's popularity in recent years, it has become the target of these bootleggers. Bluey is now commonly used to make Elsagate-style animations, with thousands of these videos bubbling up on YouTube in the past couple of years. Some of these Bluey Elsagate videos feature outright violence, while others include scat fetishes or simply encourage children to misbehave.
Já vai, Isis. Olha só quem tá aqui, é a Isis. Oh, nossa, que ração, né, menininho? Eu não vou assistir esse vídeo.
So team, this is how you get stuff done. Step 1, download ClickUp. Step 2, you don't need a step 2.
The internet. It's full of amazing, wonderful.
Vamos assistir isso aqui, que isso aqui é legal.
E aí, seus bastião? Eu sou o Senhor Wilson do canal Colônia.
Contra-ataque. Sejam bem-vindos a mais um Old School, a série que analisa os jogos antigos da Warner aqui do canal Warner Play. É engraçado que nessa série eu sempre mostro jogos pra vocês que eu já conhecia ou que eu jogava na infância e etc. Porém, o jogo de hoje eu mal conhecia e nem sabia que era da Warner pra começo de conversa. Que é Bastion, um jogo indie feito por um pessoal até que bem especial. Então já deixa o seu like se você já conhece esse jogo e se inscreva no canal Warner Play, sem esquecer de ativar o sininho de notificações para não perder as novidades da Warner e as não tão novidades que eu trago pra vocês aqui na série Old School. Bastion foi lançado em 2011 para Xbox 360, mas depois também foi para PC, Xbox One, PlayStation 4 e Nintendo Switch. O jogo já começa num tutorial e achei massa o cenário se montando na minha frente conforme eu vou andando. Mas esse tutorialzinho não segura tua mão não, pois depois que ele te dá umas armas já vem inimigos que já fazem um estrago na tua vida se você moscar. E logo depois vamos para uma espécie de cidadezinha que temos que ir reconstruindo com os cristais que pegamos no final das fases para criar estabelecimentos que mais pra frente deixa a gente fazer upgrade no personagem ou nas armas. O jogo é publicado pela Warner e feito pela Super Giant Games, o mesmo estúdio que depois lançou o aclamado Hades. Não é à toa que o jogo lembra muito Hades, não é? Câmera isométrica, combate rápido com grande foco em esquivas, várias armas pra usar e muito diálogo e história. O jogo é inteiro narrado por um velho maneiro com voz arranhada, falando meio que um cowboy. Oh, the key to your...
He lands on top of a breaker's bow, and it ain't broke.
E não é à toa que essa voz é maneira, pois ele é o mesmo dublador do Hades no Hades.
Now here's a kid whose whole world got all twisted, leaving him stranded on a rock in the sky.
É engraçado como ele narra tudo o que fazemos. Se escolhemos um caminho diferente, apanhamos, batemos ou destruímos peças do cenário, ele comenta algo sobre.
See, that core kid took was the only thing making this particular rock stay afloat.
Os gráficos, como deu pra ver, são bem bonitos. Gosto como tudo é pintado à mão, lembrando aqueles clássicos jogos mais artísticos de PlayStation 1, tipo Legend of Mana. A câmera é isométrica, a gameplay bem estilo Hades, como eu falei. Tem um botão de esquiva, defesa e 2 de ataque, que você pode customizar qual arma você usa em cada botão. E ele tem um fluxo bem frenético. Gosto de usar muita esquiva e bater logo em seguida com o martelo, que dá mais dano, ou atirar de longe para amaciar os inimigos mais fortes. Você até pode usar 2 armas de longa distância ao mesmo tempo se quiser, como os Revolve e a Shotgun junto, fazendo o jogo parecer um joguinho de tiro só porque sim. As músicas também são bem estilosas, acompanhando a gameplay, ficando calma na exploração e agitada durante as lutas, mas apesar dos criadores, esse jogo não é um roguelike, daquele tipo de jogo que você morre e recomeça do zero. Aqui a progressão é mais linear, sem ter que refazer coisa repetida. Saindo da cidadinha, você vai para um mapa para escolher qual missão você quer ir. Tem sidequests espalhadas para fazer, porque você ganha materiais para upar as armas ou ir direto ao ponto nas fases. É interessante como o pico de dificuldade desse jogo já tá logo no começo dele sem dó. Passando algumas poucas fases, o jogo já fica bem frenético, com muito inimigo vindo pra cima de você. E como o jogo não é bem um RPG de nível que você sobe com o XP, que aumenta todos os seus status, então isso pode deixar meio difícil se você não quiser fazer as sidequests para upar os atributos das suas armas, como dar mais dano crítico e velocidade de ataque, por exemplo. Os upgrades estão mais pra perks ou bônus mesmo. Porém, eu levo fácil nas opções se você achar que o jogo pega pesado demais. O que eu apanhei aqui nem é a quantidade de inimigos ou dano que eles dão, e sim a paleta de cores do jogo. Sim, os cenários são bonitos, bem desenhados, etc. Porém, são coloridos demais, não? Fora que o cenário ficar se reconstruindo conforme você anda, deixa meio confuso durante as batalhas. Não dá pra ver direito o que é inimigo ou tiro vindo pra cima de você. Então até acabei apanhando bastante, mas não cheguei a morrer tanto assim. Ainda mais porque o jogo tem um sistema de 3 itens de vida que você pode usar a hora que você quiser e é meio generoso nessa parte. Ainda mais que depois conseguimos armas novas, o jogo até fica meio fácil dependendo da build que você faz. Depois que eu peguei a shotgun e misturei com o martelo, com alguns upgrades eu fiquei imbatível. Os tiros dela são muito fortes e empurram os inimigos pra longe. É mó satisfatório só mandar um pá e os caras voar pra todo lado. Esse é um jogo relativamente mais simples pros padrões de 2011. Até não tenho muito o que falar no vídeo. Ele é literalmente isso que está na tela. E não há nada de errado nisso. Às vezes é gostoso jogar jogos mais diretos ao ponto desse jeito, sem você precisar pensar muito. Então vale a pena conhecer ele, principalmente por ele estar disponível em todas as plataformas e tem um precinho camarada. E meio que vale a pena só pelas artes desse jogo, que são bem bonitas de verdade de se ver.
Esse foi interessante, não era um jogo que eu conhecia, mas foi uma surpresa bem agradável. Mas comenta aí, você já jogou esse jogo na época que ele lançou no Xbox 360 ou em alguma plataforma mais recente? E se inscreva no canal Warner Play sem esquecer de ativar o sininho de notificações para não perder as novidades da Warner com os novos trailers que são postados aqui primeiro e também as não tão novidades que eu trago para vocês aqui nessa série.
Caralho, peraí. Cadê? Cara, eu só vi desse cara, vai tomar no cu. Bam, 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 bam. Bam, bam.
Uhul! Tá cuidando do bonsai! Vai borrifar! Vai borrifar! Vai borrifar! Uhul! Nossa!
The anime so butt ugly that for 10 years,
Pensou que essas porra de propaganda era uma boa ideia,
one
hein,
could tell
caralho?
if it was real. A show so poorly made on every level that it launched an ironic fandom rivaled only by that of Sonichu. The most controversial, most irony-poisoned, most infamous fanime on the internet. The early 2010s was a new dawn for shitposting innovations, and the idea of an 11-episode anime filled with ear-rape animation errors and broken Japanese on purpose was a novel concept. But was it actually on purpose? Why has the artist never broken character? And more importantly, what did they mean by this? Neon Neko Sugar Girls, the joke anime where you were the punchline. Today's art history lesson, Windows Movie Maker and its disastrous effect on the human race. If you haven't seen it, NNSG is a dramatic slice of life anime about two cat girls who save a hot guy from a gay criminal and talk to God. All the ingredients of a typical 2000s otaku core anime. A childlike main character with two enormous, bouncy, jiggling eyes, a love triangle between herself and a yaoi couple, and a hyper-stylized look that borders on modern art. For 11 unforgettable episodes, you follow Raku-chan as she bounces from tragedy to tragedy, eventually dying in one of the funniest sequences ever made. And it all started, as many memes have, in 2010. On April 10th of that year, YouTuber Soap Opera 46 uploaded the first episode. And though they had a few older animations on their channel, this was their first major success. And to sum it up very briefly, Raku-chan and her flat-chested friend Koneko-chan bump into mysterious bad boy Hitoshi-san. Hitoshi-san gets kidnapped by a villain who essays him, and they fall in love. Raku-chan gets bitten by a squirrel and develops cat-girl rabies. And before we get any further, I just want to be clear that I'm not calling them Chan and San because I think I speak Japanese. That's literally how they refer to themselves, and it's one of the funnier aspects of the entire show. They go to the vet, who diagnoses her with being possessed. Raku-chan, overcome by her secret feelings for Hitoshi-san and by her rabies, jumps out of a window and talks to God, and he tells her to suck it up. Then the vet performs a seance. There's a beach episode. Raku-chan finally confesses her feelings for Hitoshi-san. He rebuffs her, to which she immediately dies. And for the next 2 years, Soap Opera 46 would regularly upload new installments, building up a bewildered fan base and getting some very impressive view counts. But one thing stayed the same. Up until almost the very end, the animation never improved. In many ways, it got worse. Though the comments made at the time of upload are difficult to find, the comments that you can see today relentlessly point to the same thing. Whether this was genuine or ironic, and we'll get to that in a moment, it was incredibly ahead of its time, because everything about it just seemed too bad to be real. Every design was so off-model that no one even knew what the characters were supposed to look like. Every line from Raku-chan was nearly incomprehensible because of her borderline racist accent and never-ending squealing cadence. It was giving hentai, and the audio quality varied so badly that it could only be done justice through the following scene.
What seems to be the problem?
Raku-chan's been feeling really weird lately.
I'm sorry to tell you this, Raku-chan, but he's been diagnosed with rabies.
No, I don't think so.
And there were tons of smaller problems as well. Traced artwork, hands that would make AI blush, the fact that this was the ending screen after Raku-chan died of a broken heart. And that brings us to the only thing I'm qualified to discuss here. The animation. So it goes without saying that NNSG is terribly animated, but does that automatically make it a shitpost? The answer is complicated. One thing you ought to keep in mind about animation is that a lot of the time anime suffers a lower frame rate to preserve the quality of the artwork itself, but NNSG was unconstrained by the rules of art. Here are shots of feet. Here's a very normal shot of Raku-chan walking on some grass. Here's a shot of Hitoshi-san pleading for his life moments before he is Pulp Fictioned. But the thing about it is that you also got shots like this, running, sophisticated jiggle physics, and the nurse character's magical girl transformation scene. As janky as it may look, it still takes an enormous amount of effort to make art this bad, and animating 11 full sequence episodes with suspiciously balanced background music is quite the undertaking. So clearly, the artists knew what they were doing. But that begs the question. If you know how to animate, and you know how to get millions of eyes on your project. How do you do it in MS Paint and Windows Movie Maker? And the answer that may come to mind is for the lulz. But you have to remember that this was a different time. Irony poisoning hadn't quite set in yet, and there's a lot more going on here than you think. So let's take a step back and remember what the meme landscape looked like in early 2010. On the one hand, YouTube poops were thriving. Everybody and their mother wanted to make the next Pingus. Am I calling this a YouTube poop? Absolutely not. But Windows Movie Maker was incredibly popular, and YouTube was increasingly becoming a dumping ground for any audiovisual nightmare you could possibly come up with. Memes were weird, they were sincere, and most of us didn't even know if it was pronounced meme or mimi. On the other hand, super ironic memes were simply not the default yet. Remember how common it was to see people misusing image macros as just a way to talk about their day. The concept that every meme had to be counterintuitive to point to the thing that you actually meant wasn't very widespread. Regular users of the internet, which is to say people who had not been corrupted by image boards and 4chan, were keen to use these things as a vehicle of self-expression. No irony needed. You could safely assume that fan art and fanimations really meant it. And who could forget DeviantArt? Anime, though niche, was exploding in popularity. Thousands of young artists, myself included, aspired to one day make their own anime. And when you combine these three elements, the beginning of ironic memery, anime culture, and the earnestness with which people were posting their creations online, an explanation starts to emerge. But back to the timeline. 2012. On December 24th, with no warning at all, the show came to an abrupt end. The yaoi couple had sealed their relationship. Koneko-chan experienced no character development whatsoever, and Raku-chan, seeing her chances with Hitoshi-san slip away due to the invention of gay rights, dies of a broken heart. And that's basically everything we know about the show. So why did this fanime, out of all of the YouTube poops and baby shit posts from this time, confuse people so much?
Quando o plano de benefícios da sua empresa não tem a VIT, faz total sentido pedir para o seu RH mudar para total.
Weeaboos. And not in the way that you're thinking. A weeaboo or a weeb is someone who has a consuming interest in all things Japan and anime, and they frequently fail to separate the two. 2000s, early 2010s weeaboos were very much the Rick and Morty fans of their day, meaning anything they touched became radioactive to everyone else. And it seems to me that this fanime, for all of its problems, was a deeply misunderstood commentary on weeaboos. While their love for anime was mostly well-intentioned, there was definitely a lot of weird exoticism going on. I don't know about you, but growing up in the 2000s, I definitely had that friend who loved anime, insisted that they were secretly half Japanese, and would make me check their eyes to see if they were getting more slanted. It was a really different time, and while it's pointless to apply the moral standards of today to a bygone era, we can all probably acknowledge that one of the major problems with weeaboo culture back in the day is that they failed to see Japanese people as human beings, and more of just a fun extension of their anime fantasy. And Neon Neko Sugar Girls does a spectacular job of portraying that version of reality. The characters are a mutated blob of anime tropes. They regularly mix Japanese words in their sentences, gifting us with such abominations as "I am very arigato-ful" and "let's have a kawaii sleepover, Chan." They speak in a garbled accent that, while it doesn't sound anything like Japanese, is very reminiscent of the early 2000s casually racist humor that bled into literally everything. I want to be ninja. Between the panty shots, the extremely cliche yaoi trope of essay that turns into love, and a character named Burrito Senpai who wears a sombrero and says this.
Raku-chan, I am missing you from the Korea today.
Hey, baby.
Everything about this screams satire, and I'm sure that must be incredibly obvious to you. But as the comments point out, this was simply far ahead of its time. It was made for the audience of now. And that brings us neatly along to today, because although the show ended in 2012, people have not been able to stop talking about it, and Soap Opera 46 has actually made a few recent appearances. On the 10-year anniversary of the first episode, they...
Eu já vou, pô. Tchau, até a próxima. A gente continua na parte 2 dessa porra aqui.